Hello and welcome to The Real USA. Today we're in the historic neighborhood of Georgetown along the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. On this beginning of the year episode, we'll explore what it's like to live in poverty in the United States, an issue that's a daily reality for thousands of people living in this country. I'm Alexandra Hall. As you watch these stories, I invite you to share your thoughts and comments via our Twitter @TheListenerEnglish. Many people in the United States consider North Carolina to be a state that's thriving, but recent studies tell a different story. According to the latest research, about 1 in every 6 residents is having trouble making ends meet, and approximately 18% of the population is considered to be living in poverty. Statistics that show that the issue of hunger in the United States is an urgent one. Reporter William Denslow has the story.
Oh, okay.
Mid-morning in North Carolina, and Wanda Baker is getting her food for the week. But after her husband's trucking business went under last year, she's been forced to come to food banks like this to put enough food on the table. And Wanda is certainly not alone. Some organisations say that around 1 in 6 people in the state struggle to afford enough to eat each month.
A lot of days we have over 200 people here to get food. We've stood out here in the cold, the rain, the heat, whatever, because we need it that badly.
At the food bank of Central and Eastern North Carolina, they say food insecurity is a growing problem. In 14 years, they say they now support an extra 260,000 individuals in their 34-county catchment area. Following the recession and the decline of the state's manufacturing sector, parts of North Carolina are starting to thrive. But this growth isn't consistent, and it's largely rural areas that are suffering. And as the cost of living continues to rise, many in the state are being sucked into poverty. With many working in food banks arguing that politicians aren't doing enough to help, thousands of people in the state are forced to make tough choices on a daily basis.
I call them wonderful jugglers because each month they're forced to make choices day in and day out. Do I put gas in the car or do I feed my family? Do I get the prescription filled or take my child to the doctor, or do I put food on the table?
With so many people reliant on food banks, some organisations are cooking up creative ways to help people escape poverty. At the Interfaith Food Shuttle, people struggling to find a job are given skills so they can find work in for-profit food industries. While confident schemes like this do work, people here say they need support.
Food banks can't do it alone. They have to do it in partnership with public sources, government sources, and with private sources. We have to get business involved because, that is the way we'll solve it. We won't solve it just by putting food on a plate.
But many food banks are struggling to even do that. That's why many human services agencies say real action is needed now. When it comes to food insecurity in North Carolina, the stats are troubling. Some feel that schemes to make people more self-sufficient will help, but a common thread amongst people working in the state's food banks feel that drastic national policy changes are needed to really address the issue of hunger here in the US. William Denslow, Telesur in North Carolina.
Let's keep going with North Carolina. After months of campaigning, lawmakers in the state have taken actions to restrict youth labor on tobacco plantations, measures that human rights groups say are necessary to protect the health and well-being of underage tobacco workers. Reporter William Denslow talked to one miner about what it's like to be a kid working in the tobacco fields of the United States.
Anna Yesenia Flores has been working on tobacco farms since she was about 12 years old, sometimes working 7 days a week to help support her mum after her divorce. Now 17, she hopes to be the first one in the family to make it to college. But those memories from the fields are hard to forget.
The tobacco plants are like 6 feet tall, and you have kids like me that are 4'9" trying to reach those plants. You get very tired from your shoulders and your back, and sometimes you get chemicals sprayed on you. Like, I'm pretty sure that's not supposed to happen.
Anna is not alone. Under US laws, if there's parental permission, then children as young as 12 can work on farms so long as it's out of school hours. The result, according to some human rights groups, is that there are children that have been exposed to pesticides and have shown symptoms of acute nicotine poisoning. And with North Carolina being one of 4 states that accounts for 90% of tobacco grown in the US, the problem is especially relevant.
There's a real threat, to the well-being of these kids. It's different than if you're picking cucumbers, which, yeah, it's long, hard work, long, hard days, it's hot, it's hard work. But it's a whole nother ballgame when you're dealing with tobacco.
And here in North Carolina, it's an issue many hope is beginning to be addressed. In October, the Tobacco Growers Association of North Carolina issued a policy saying that children under 16 shouldn't be hired to work in tobacco farms, even with parental consent. And representing over 2,300 tobacco farmers, they say they don't condone child labour. Graham Boyd works for the Tobacco Growers Association of North Carolina. While he says there could be some cases of child labour, the issue has been greatly exaggerated.
The scale is our primary response. It just isn't widespread. It isn't an epidemic problem. As I've said repeatedly now, it overwhelmingly does not exist. There are many operations that we could go to today where there aren't any persons in the field. It's all done completely by machine harvest.
It's winter now, but when it's time for tobacco harvesting in a few months, children under 16 should not be seen in fields like these. But with these tobacco workers so reliant on the whole family earning money, making ends meet remains a huge area of concern.
They wanted to make sure that they had that income would be replaced in some way. And like I say, the greatest way to solve that would be to pay the parents more.
It's a notion some reject. The Growers Association argue it will make families more inclined to put their kids into the fields to make even more money. But for Anna, she says it will make a world of difference. But she wants to see these companies do more than pay their workers a decent wage. She wants them to introduce schemes like scholarships, so people like her can make a real difference for their families, starting with a full education. William Denslow, Telesaur, in North Carolina.
The city of San Jose in Northern California recently ordered the eviction of a homeless encampment just minutes from Silicon Valley. Home to technology giants like Google and Apple, it's one of the wealthiest regions in the United States. Our correspondent Rachel Silverman has more.
This shantytown called the Jungle was home for years to hundreds of people living rough amongst rotting trash, rats, and human waste. Now they're waiting by the side of the road with everything they own piled into garbage bags and shopping carts. Former resident Andrew Costa says these people have been through very tough times.
They're part of the society that are discarded. They're your son that can't get a job. They're your daughter that takes too much drugs and it's not understood. The ones that didn't want to go to school. They're runaway people.
The city of San Jose is evicting the homeless from this 68-acre park, and work crews have come in with bulldozers to clear out the mismatched belongings they've left behind. Some people have lived here for years.
It's like a big family. We all looked out for each other, especially the females that are single. We all had our own little group that we would check up on each other. But unfortunately, with what they did to us today, it's like they split the family apart.
But city officials say the encampment has been a dangerous place.
There's been increasing acts of violence, victimization of the homeless people that are living here. With the wet weather coming, we're concerned about flooding conditions. We're concerned about people's general health and well-being.
City officials have also been under pressure from state and regional water authorities to clean up the trash and human waste. They committed $4 million to move as many Jungle residents as possible into subsidized housing. But after a 1.5-year-long effort, many of the residents were unable to find housing indoors.
I think it's a disgrace, and it's an example of the total failure of our city's housing policies as well as our state and our nation. We've abandoned a whole section of our people, and we don't take care of them. We allow them to sleep outside. We have We don't build the housing that they need.
San Jose has the country's highest percentage of unsheltered homeless, meaning people with no car, no family or friends with whom to seek refuge. And on moving day, many of the jungle's former residents had been unable to find housing. They stood with their belongings, wondering where to go. Where are you going to go today?
I don't know. Where are we going to go, Lily?
I don't know.
We don't know.
Work crews plan to spend 2 weeks clearing the jungle. It will likely take its former residents longer than that to find and settle into their new accommodation. Rachel Silverman for Telesur in San Jose, California.
We now go to New Jersey, where hundreds of people have built their own city. Local authorities deemed the so-called tent city illegal, and they say that its inhabitants must leave immediately. Reporter Andrea Arenas has the story.
This is the main avenue of Tent City, located on public land in Lakewood, New Jersey. Tent City was born in 2005. Its founders were homeless people who, in search of a home, decided to build their own town with plastics and pieces of wood. Today, however, this town is threatened by imminent destruction. Local authorities claim the site is illegal and have offered the community a year of free housing in return of Tent City's destruction. But for people like Bill, one of the founders of Tent City, the proposal is not a long-time solution.
Set you up 1 year, for give you money for the rent. I ain't heard nothing about food or anything, just for the rent. So now they're going with a buyout. In other words, they give you so much money, which is crazy. But a few people took it, and they're back here.
Tent City, with its 150 inhabitants, has in place its own system of organization. The residents have their own letterboxes, as well as a chapel here. They feel safe and enjoy a sense of community, something temporary public housing does not offer.
You've got to take all your belongings in hand and wander the streets of the city that you're in until it's 5 o'clock and time to come back, and hopefully there's a spot for you. So it's a very cold system. It addresses the physical needs, of food and shelter, and usually clothing, but it doesn't address those emotional needs that we all have.
According to the government statistics, every night some 600,000 people in this country have nowhere to sleep. This is why places like Tent City offer an alternative for the most poor. The residents of Tent City claim their only sin is that they are poor.
La ciudad de Lakewood ha declarado una guerra en contra las personas que no tienen albergue.
Lakewood has declared a war against the homeless. If they see you sleeping underneath an umbrella, they arrest you and take you to court.
Te van a arrestar y te llevan a la corte.
La pobreza extrema en Estados Unidos ha crecido por lo menos un tercio durante la última década, cifra jamás antes vista en este país.
Over the past decade, extreme poverty in the United States has grown by at least 1/3, a figure never before seen in this country.
Las políticas económicas que han conducido al empobrecimiento acelerado de su población. Andrea Arenas, Telesur, Lakewood, Nueva Jersey.
Washington, D.C. is home to thousands of Americans currently experiencing homelessness. About 11 years ago, a project started here that eventually spread to 35 countries. Street Sense is a newspaper produced by homeless authors, illustrators, and poets, and it sells approximately 16,000 issues on a bi-weekly basis.
Jamal is one of more than 15,000 homeless people living in Washington, D.C. 6 years ago, he decided to join Street Sense, the only newspaper run by people experiencing homelessness. It is published bi-weekly and addresses segregation in Washington, D.C., where 20% of the population live in poverty.
Working in Street Sense allows you to meet people, to be heard. You can even show what you do. They give you the opportunity, as they do with everybody who comes here, as they did with me. I am not in the best of the circumstances, but I have faith. I can come here to sell the paper and realize that every day you have the opportunity to change.
Along with other 50 newspapers in the US, Street Sense is part of the international network of street papers, which is present in 35 countries around the world. You can find people such as Mrs. Thomas Pagan, who pays 50 cents per paper and sells them for $2. Likewise, there are 150 newspaper sellers earning an average of $50 daily.
When I see people sleeping on the streets, especially women, I go to where they are and ask them, "Why do you come and work with Street Sense?" When you earn money, even though it is not that much, when you spend the entire night on the streets, you can use that money to buy a hot beverage.
Brian is the director of these newspapers, founded in 2003.
Street Sense was founded in order to provide men and women experiences homelessness with economic opportunities. They are tired of trying to get a job, however they get nothing. Companies turn their backs on them.
50% of the content is produced by people experiencing homelessness. It is a product of high quality that, as Brian points out, should be implemented in other cities.
There is no other place in the world, neither an urban nor a rural area, where people experiencing homelessness profit from a project like this.
For many of them, Street Sense is not only a source of income, but an opportunity to express their concerns.
Francesca Manuele, Washington DC, Telesur.
Poverty is an issue that in the United States is most visible in big cities. In Los Angeles, California, street art is being used to draw attention to those who live in the streets. Jacqueline Llamas has the story.
This is downtown Los Angeles, an area that is widely known for its luxurious apartments, theaters, museums and restaurants. Ironically, just minutes from here we did find Skid Row, where garbage is abundant, along with drugs, misery, prostitution, and mainly people experiencing homelessness. According to statistics, about 1,800 of these people live in a 50 blocks area, a reality known by many, but only few people are willing to help. Skid Robot is a street artist who used to live among the shadows. However, he decided to change his life.
I hide my identity to the public and the authorities. I paint on walls and make graffitis, an activity that is deemed illegal.
Behind this mask, you will find a graffiti artist. Last year, he started to paint their dreams. For example, we have Walter, who just got a pair of wings.
I am very grateful. My grandmother is very happy because now I have these wings. It was all I ever wanted, my wings. We were walking by Skid Row. Then I saw a person sleeping on the street. There is when I come up with this idea. I thought of painting when I thought his dream were. Maybe he was dreaming about money. It was a wonderful idea. Then I painted the dollar symbol. That way I made his dream a reality.
This is the way it started, a revolution. The only thing he wanted was to raise awareness. Up to this date, his work is portrayed on more than 100 walls all over the city. There, people can find thrones, stars, cars, and food. Everything that people like him dream of.
You try to be humoristic, addressing a situation that most of the people are not aware of. They make you feel different emotions. You care about these people. Can any person walk around and not care about them?
It is not a secret that the policies that the authorities put in place to eradicate poverty are still insufficient.
Jacqueline Llamas, Telesur, Los Angeles.
Well, that's all for today's The Real USA. Don't forget, you can always send us your comments and suggestions to our Twitter @TelesurEnglish. I'm Alexandra Hall. See you next time.